How do you make a game? Or rather, more importantly, how do you make a game that makes money? After all, when you're a business, you don't necessarily have to make a good game, so to speak, just one that you know is going to make a lot of money. So how do you do that? Luckily, we live in an age of game development where all the mistakes have already been made for us. All we have to do is look at what our predecessors did and do it again. I mean, why reinvent science when everything's already been done for us? 2 hydrogen molecules and an oxygen, you're always gonna get water. Phenylacetone and methylamine supposedly gets you crystal meth. Running, jumping and squishing enemies, that's a platformer. That's just how you do it. That's the formula for a 2D platformer. So how do you make a game? Just follow the formula for the genre of game you're trying to make. Every genre has a formula, and as long as you follow the formula, you're almost guaranteed to make something that isn't entirely awful.
Fatality.
Anyway, the formula guides. It stops you from doing things that wouldn't work in a particular genre. The formula keeps you on track. The formula guarantees some kind of result. The formula is boring. It's true, the formula does guarantee a result, but it's still the same result as everyone else who's followed the formula before you. Yeah, you did a thing, but you're not going to stand out. You know how on YouTube, sometimes a channel will just randomly blow up out of the blue? They tried something, and it's worked. That's good. I love that. But then, you get all these knockoff channels who have been like, that's a pretty good idea. And it pays. And eventually it all deteriorates into badly photoshopped clickbaity thumbnails, clearly just trying to capitalize on this new trend. Like, come on, this isn't even subtle. Yeah, it's not quite how it looked in the thumbnail, is it? And your channel name, Primitive Technology Idea. Oh, I'm not Sonic, I'm my own original character, Blonic the Hedgehog. Trend followers. It's not big money. It's the trend setters that make the truly big bucks. But it is easy money. And based on that, I kinda understand why they do it. I mean, yeah, of course I understand why they do it. Money is an extremely powerful motivator, as we have seen. What I mean is, I'm not advocating what they do. Starting a trend is almost impossible, so I can see why people would be so quick to hop on a bandwagon. But then again, I feel there's more that needs to be taken into account than just following the formula. Formulaic design is a trap that a lot of developers fall into. They don't experiment. They've got their formula, and that's just how it's done. You don't deviate from the rules. That's not allowed. And oh wait, we've just made the same game again. If you look at the title of this video, you might be able to work out where I'm heading with this. Yeah, it's Pokémon. For a while now, I've been looking for an excuse to buy a Nintendo Switch, but I don't really play video games enough to justify getting one. I'd really love to play Tetris 99, but spending £300 for just that one game isn't really something I'm gonna do. And none of the other games really interest me that much. I need something more. Oh my god, new Pokémon games for the Switch that aren't just remakes of the originals. Could Pokémon Sword and Shield be the games that finally justify my purchase of a Nintendo Switch? When these games got announced, I felt a tiny glimmer of excitement. But then I thought, wait, I already own these games. Why would I buy a Nintendo Switch and Pokemon Sword or Shield when I already have a Game Boy Advance, a Nintendo DS, and a 3DS, all of which can play Pokemon games? Well, because of all the new content, you might be saying. Yeah, all of that new content they've added in every Pokemon iteration. I'm gonna describe a Pokemon game, and you have to try and work out which one I'm talking about. Okay, you start off in a small rural town living with your mum in the middle of nowhere. You go into the wilderness where you meet a professor named after a tree who gives you a Pokemon, either a grass, water or fire type. You then proceed to go on a great adventure all around the country, collecting gym badges from the 8 gyms found in various cities. Somewhere along the way you encounter an evil organization named Team Insert Cool Word Here. And of course, being the hero you are, cause them to disband by defeating their leader in a Pokemon battle. After casually doing so, you proceed to the Pokemon League, which consists of 4 elite trainers, and after defeating them, you get to fight the champion, who turns out to be none other than that mysterious person who you keep meeting throughout your travels. What a twist! So, which game am I talking about? Cast your votes now. Okay, if you guessed Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, you're correct. And if you guessed Pokemon Red and Blue, then you'd also be correct. And if you guessed Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, you'd be correct. And if you guessed Pokemon X and Y, then I don't know. I didn't play those ones. But if you guessed Pokemon Gold and Silver, or Pokemon Black and White, then you'd be wrong. You get your Pokemon before you go into the wilderness in those games. It's madness, I know. Deviating from the formula? That's illegal! To be fair, in the case of Gold and Silver, the franchise was still in its infancy. The formula hadn't been fully established just yet. I mean, there aren't even any story-driven legendary Pokemon boss battles. What's a Pokemon game without any story-driven legendary Pokemon boss battles? No, those weren't introduced until Ruby and Sapphire, after which they of course have to be in every other Pokemon game ever made, usually occurring somewhere between the 7th and 8th gyms, so we can add that to the formula as well. Pokemon is one of the most formulaic series of games I've ever played in my life. It's like, once you've played one, you've played them all, haven't you? And I can see why Game Freak would do this, because of course, it works. Why change the formula when that's what sells? But at the same time, you don't necessarily have to change the formula to keep something interesting. Imagine you found a recipe online for some kind of curry or something, and it's delicious, so you start making it every day and that's all you eat, and eventually it's gonna get a bit boring. But one day you decide for whatever reason to just add a tiny pinch of cinnamon. You're not changing the formula, but that tiny pinch of cinnamon can make enough of a difference to reinvigorate your interest. A lot of the time, a complete rework of the formula isn't necessary, you just need to mix things up a bit. So I'm gonna make a suggestion. I know it's a bit radical, but hear me out here. What if once, just once, we have a Pokemon game with an electric starter? And I know we've already had a couple, but I mean one where you get a choice between electric, ground, ice, dragon, basically anything that isn't just grass, water, fire. I think a change like that could add a lot of interest with practically no risk involved. But it appears Game Freak is already taking steps to mix up the formula. I've refrained from mentioning Sun and Moon until now because a lot of the things are actually different in that entry. For example, gyms have been replaced by
The Island Challenge.
It still has every other cliche though, including a criminal organisation that has a name consisting of the word team followed by a random sinister sounding word. In fact, Ultra Sun and Moon have two. Team Rainbow Rocket. As far as I can tell, it seems to be made up of all the defeated team leaders from previous games. I can't decide if that's the most amazing thing or the most awful. Anyhow, things are changing. Getting rid of gyms is a pretty big deal, even if they are just being replaced by a similar challenge with a different name. What would I like to see in future Pokemon games? Well, I recommend watching Funk's video, Pokemon's Problematic Pacing. It pretty much sums up everything I'd love to see in a new Pokemon game, so accurately in fact, it began to scare me. And yes, this video is partly inspired by that video, so I thought I should give credit. And hey, I like to imagine that my videos on the topic partly inspired him. Probably not the case. It's likely he doesn't know they exist, but I can still dream. One thing I'd like to add though, more than 8 gyms, so you can choose which ones you do to challenge the Elite Four. To summarize, using a formula to make something isn't necessarily a bad thing. Everything we do is built on the shoulders of what came before us. But it's not mind-numbingly difficult to just add something new to the equation every once in a while. Changing one tiny thing can make your product more unique and interesting. Instead of making the same Pokemon game every couple of years, maybe think about restructuring the story a bit. Instead of just copying what the popular channel is making, add something that makes it unique to you. Instead of uploading Let's Play Minecraft Part 3584 to an audience of 3 subscribers consisting of yourself, your friend, and your friend's alternate account, maybe rethink your upload strategy, because in that case, the formula might need adjusting.
This meme will never die because we are in the biz.